Hi, everybody. If you're starting to join us, I think you can start to join us now. Got one extra person I can see. I'm going to wait a minute or so before I start being specific. So you obviously can see on the screen. I'm just going to change this. If you're joining us tonight, this is the industry panel and information session of media practice and industry. We've got sort of three parts to the discussion tonight. I'm going to run through just some basic information about the MA. There's an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end. We're also going to have a panel discussion, and that's going to be between myself, one of our senior lecturers, Dr. Gregory Ferris, Dylan Bowen, who's a film producer, and Will Newen, who is a current student. Yeah, so like I say, we'll just wait a few minutes. I'll probably repeat myself a couple of times throughout this. Yeah, so as I say, you'll have questions at the end through the Q&A chat. Do ask questions. And I can pass it. You know, some of them you might want to ask a student perspective or an industry perspective. Particularly in the Australian landscape, Dylan has worked with a lot of emerging filmmakers, first-time directors, particularly in their first big credit, professional credit. So he really, I think, as a very experienced producer, knows very much the sort of qualities he's looking for in a recent graduate, or the kinds of skills that you might acquire in a postgraduate degree. And Greg teaches across three of our subjects in the MA, Media Practice and Industry, and I run the story core, and he actually does the other core subject, Collaborative Media Project. And so we'll be able to talk at depth about the degree if you've got questions about that. Okay, now we're over time. Still just a few minutes in. Right, so I'm just going to see who else is here. So we've got Dylan. You're there. Do you want to say hello?
Hello.
So Dylan will be back with us in about 10, 15 minutes. Hi, Will.
Sure.
This is Will down the bottom, and Will is in. Are you halfway through, Will?
Yes, I'm halfway through, almost finished this semester already.
Yeah, so Will's one of our very popular students in the MA. We've got Dr. Ferris, Gregory Ferris, who's just disappeared down there, but
no, I am here. I am here.
There. So Greg's there. So what we're going to do, I might start. Yeah, I think in about 30 seconds I'm going to start. So what we're going to do is I'm going to run through these panels. Then we're going to have a panel discussion with producer Dylan Bowen, with Greg Ferris, who is one of the central teachers in the MA, and from Will too. Like I said, I've said it before, ask some questions at the end. Sometimes it's really good to ask students, like, well, about what their experiences are, what their pathways are. But also we've got Dylan here if you want to talk about the industry experience. Okay, we might start. I'm just going to turn my colleagues off here. There we go, hang on. There I am. All right, so yes, I'm Professor Rachel Landers. I'm the head of Media Arts and Production. We launched this brand new MA, Media Practice and Industry, in 2019. So quite ironically, we still haven't had a full 18 months of normality because, of course, COVID hit in 2020. But, you know, nonetheless, I think we've been very nimble and very nuanced, and we've just had some wonderful, wonderful students. And it's a very innovative, forward-looking MA. We designed it very much in collaboration with the industry, trying to future-proof our students, trying to be a little bit more focused on prototyping, developing ideas, having a good sense of the professional aspects of the industry. You know, while making things is really important, you also know who's going to buy it, who's going to sell, and how you're going to connect with your audience. So we've tried to make it a really holistic degree, but it's also slightly unusual, and I'll just start to go through it. And of course, you know, if you've got any more detailed questions, you always can follow up with me or with Greg, or if you have any specific questions about particular subjects or pathways, you always feel free to follow up with us. Okay, so we're going to be recording the session. Now, this is really important, always to ask permission. We're going to record audio and screen share, right, the presenters. So this is for a teaching and learning purpose. It's to share questions and responses, particularly to some people who couldn't make it tonight. Also to, you know, help our knowledge about the kinds of questions that you might be interested in. And so just by taking part of this session, you need to know that we will be recording that. We're going to be capturing your questions, but you will not actually be filmed, okay? So, but it's really important to know that you can withdraw your consent for this. And if you don't want to be involved, just see that, that email there. So fast.marketing@UTS and let them know, okay? All right. All right, so the master of me, oh, I'm going to move my little, whoops, that's no good. Move my down here. All right, so the Master of Media Practice and Industry course structure it's a little bit strange, and I'm going to try and give you a visual description of it. There are only 2 compulsory subjects, one at the beginning and one at the end. One of the compulsory subjects I teach, which is called StoryCorps Ethical Film Production, where we drill very deeply into a lot of the kind of issues facing the industry right now, about diversity, about representation, about who can tell what stories. It is a very provocative and thought-provoking course. It's also very production-oriented. You make lots of different things. You do group projects. But it's really about taking a deep dive into who you are, finding your voice, and finding really good connections with other students that you're working with. The other compulsory subject is right at the end, and that's Collaborative Media Project. And Greg, do you want to jump in and just talk about Collaborative Media Project?
Sure. So it's the now the capstone subject for the MPI, and we operate it very much in the same way as the Affleck Damon model of Project Greenlight, where students get to pitch projects, other students get to vote on those projects, and then those projects go into production. This works quite well in a hybrid mode. So if you are able to do it remotely, we do have at the moment, we do have some online versions of that subject, but it does work very well as a class experience. It's been running for about 3 semesters now, and it's been quite popular so far. And that can be any type of genre or project. So it could be short film, drama, documentary. It could be a out of the box style hybrid project, installation. It can be anything that you want it to be, but it needs to win the pitch.
Yeah, that's right. Which is really important, goes back to what I was saying about we are very focused on what things work and connect with audiences, because it's no good just making a beautiful opus if no one wants to see it. Right, so they're the 2 compulsory subjects. Now you then have 3 streams or choice blocks called innovation, industry, and production. And in each of those streams is about 4 to 5 subjects. And you need to do 2 from each one, and then another 2. And it gives you a really good balance. So in innovation, we have business of screens, which is a very much a producing course. We have advanced creative entrepreneurship that we offer in conjunction with the Compton Creative School. So that's actually offered by a leadership school in creativity. So it's a partnership between us and Creative Compton School. We also do in industry, we do experiential media, we do curation, which I think is a really critical subject now. So we see that some people's pathways may be into curation. So things like Vivid Festival or curating multimedia film festivals, these kinds of things. They very much want someone with a film media background, but they also want someone who understands all the highly skilled aspects of curation. And then we have production, which is, and there are many more subjects in this, and I encourage you to have a look online of the other subjects. In production, we have Screen Ideas, which is screenwriting, both for flatties, the old-fashioned films, but also for VR. We've got collaborative creativity in production, which is an iterative, very it's each week you make something creative. We've also got Greg teaches in that he does 2 subjects: advanced post-production and immersive production, which of course is VR and all those sorts of things. So it's a very organic pathway. So it'll be interesting talking to Will in a little bit about the kind of pathway he has taken, because it can take you in quite different directions. I mean, it's not quite choose your own adventure because it is quite structured, but that you can push yourself into a much more, I suppose, leadership producing type background, or push yourself much more towards the making of production oriented thing, because you do these additional 2 subjects from any of the choices, so you can weight them towards one or the other direction you're going in. All right, so full-time students, it's 1.5 years. It's 3 subjects per semester. It's quite demanding. I think we can talk to Will about that. If you want to do it part-time, which of course you can, it'll probably take between 2 and 5 years, and that depends how many subjects you want to take. If you want to take 1 per semester, you can, or 2 and then 1, and so on and so forth. We do also offer a graduate certificate in media practice and industry. Now, this can be a really interesting choice if you just want to dip your toe back into postgraduate study. For example, you could, let's just say that you had a project that you were really keen to develop. You would do my subject, which is StoryCorps, which will give you some really good fundamental understandings of the industry and some practical skills, and you'll be doing your basic workshops in there. But then you could do Business of Screens, which would be very much about developing your pitching, producing, having, so basically we do a development project, then a production package in that subject. So you're budgeting, you're getting everything ready for market, and you could do writing for the screen. So you could use that to develop your project, your drama, or whatever. So you can look at a grad cert as something that could be quite focused around a particular project, or you just want to kind of get your sense, of what it's like to experience that kind of postgraduate level of study. So again, the grad cert, no, that's 4 times. So the grad cert, it's just 3 subjects. Okay, so as I said to you, it's a really unusual shape, I think. You have this ability to create your own path, and but also I think what the kind of nice thing about this is that we have subjects that I think really stretch people in directions they weren't expecting and take them into some fascinating ideas development. So we have a design thinking subject, we have influence in the digital world, and these are offered by other disciplines. So you're actually developing, if you want to go in that direction, say you do curation, influence in the digital world, you'd be looking very much becoming a very sophisticated marketing type arts business type person. We're very much focused on the future. We felt very strongly that an old-fashioned postgraduate film course was very siloed. It was very production-based. It was very much about making a complete thing. We're much more focused on prototyping, iterative ideas, that you come up with a suite of projects. The other thing we encourage all our students, both at an undergraduate and a postgraduate level, is to join our very, very active Facebook Media Arts and Production group, which it's not open to public, but it is open to current students and graduates. We are almost constantly in production. People are looking constantly with crew. So what's great about that is you can really build up your promotional materials, your show reel, and so you can, depending on how much time you've got, and I understand that time is always challenging for this world, but you can, throw yourself into lots of different production experiences. We have a wonderful media lab, some wonderful gear. Actually, Greg's sitting in our studio right now and looking at one of our lovely cameras. Yeah, so you can really use your time quite flexibly outside the kind of very formal structure, study structure as well. The good thing about the MA, it's been very flexibly constructed. For example, my course, StoryCorps course, is run over 5 Saturdays over a semester. They're very intense days, long days, 6 or 7 hours, but they're very focusing. But it means we try and keep classes later at night. Some are during the day, but it really we have people who are in full-time work who are doing the MA full-time as well. So we've tried to be really mindful of people need to work full-time, and they need to study full-time, and they need to have a flexibility in delivery. Okay, the deadlines for application: domestic students the 27th of June, international students is the 31st of May. They're the 2 places that you can apply through: UTS online application system or our international office webpage. The admission requirements, we really love encouraging people from quite diverse backgrounds to come into the degree, and it makes for a really rich student cohort. So it's a bachelor degrees or a higher qualification in an area field of society and culture, like a Bachelor of Arts or Creative Arts. If you don't have a degree in that, I know that a lot of people work either as part-time editors or marketers, or in running people's Facebook pages and all this kind of stuff, and that can all add up to a CV that has 2 years of related professional, creative, or cultural work, and we let those people in. I mean, so I just think that we've got some people from really different backgrounds who have just developed a real passion for creative arts and media post their undergraduate degree, and they've been working in that area, and we're really encouraging them to apply. What we do ask, if you don't have a BA in that area, is for a CV and a personal statement. All right, these are the English language requirements we have. This is all very sort of academic, but they can see on the website. So you can see that if it applies to you. Okay, the scary part, this is the money. We invest, I mean, obviously for domestic students, it's a lot more, it's a lot lower than the international students. But again, it's really important to know that you can get fee help, and Google Field Help to find out your eligibility, and US alumni save 10%. Oh, also recognize a prior learning, that's really important. So if you've done, we've had this happen, some people who've started a postgraduate degree at another institution, and they've come to us and we've worked out, what the equivalent subjects are they don't need to complete. All right, we're going to start our panel discussion right now. I'm just going to put the panel up there, and I'm going
Rachel, I have a question from Alison in the audience.
Yes, hello, Alison.
She says, "Hi panel, I'm a former journalism student. I've dabbled in a bit of media and production as a hobby, but I have little to no experience in a professional setting. Am I still eligible to apply for this course? Even so, would I be in the right place? I love videography, but would my limited knowledge require me to take a Bachelor's of Media, Arts and Production first?"
No, is the answer to that. I mean, I'd very much encourage you to probably do subjects like, as well as StoryCorps, probably start with business of screens and advanced creative entrepreneurship, just to get yourself a really good grounding in the industry. And that has all that information in there, and you can do some good group projects. Or the other thing I would encourage you to do is creativity and production, which is because it's you are making a creative project every week. It just throws you in the deep end. So it's both high and low stakes. You don't have time to not think about it, and people really enjoy that. We've had people with really limited backgrounds. I mean, it's interesting right now. Currently, I have a student who is now an Australian resident, but he's originally from the UK. He was very nervous about his lack of, I suppose, core skills of cutting and shooting and things like that. But he's an incredibly good storyteller, and we're really focused on that particular skill that he had. And I think as a journalist, you probably have that skill as well. And it's extraordinary how in really what are we up to now? Week 10? Yeah, he's just bloomed and his work is really good. I think people can feel it's intimidating. We have a wonderful Media Lab staff, wonderful workshops, wonderful support. And when you work with groups, and because the postgraduate it's not gigantic, we usually have about sort of 15, 60 students a year. I'm probably about 75 across the cohort. They become very tight and they support each other in the production, and you learn as you go. So no, absolutely, you would not need to do that. Another BA, you could apply now.
We have one more question from anonymous attendee which may not be their real name. Does UTS have any industry partnerships?
We do. Can we wait? Should we have a discussion first and
Let's
maybe
do
get
that.
the questions at the end? So I'm actually going to stop sharing right now so I can see everyone's beautiful faces. So if Will, Greg, and Dylan come back on. Okay, I'm just going to introduce everyone here. Okay. And we're going to have speaker view. That's better, right? Okay, so I'm going to introduce our panel. So we've got Dr. Gregory Ferris. As I say, he is in our studio right now. Greg teaches immersive media, advanced post-production and collaborative media project in our BA, in our MA, what I'm talking about. We've got Will, who is halfway through, more than halfway through his MA. I met Will last year. So he can talk to you about, I've got some questions for everyone about his experience from a student point of view. And we've got Dylan Blowen, and Dylan is a film producer. He's an award-winning filmmaker. He started his career at Paramount and Universal, and then worked in live television in New York. He came to Australia. His company's made a lot of, many award-winning films. He was then a development and production executive for Screen New South Wales, which is the biggest state financing and development for film and media productions. So he put a lot of things into production. He did that for a number of years. Most recently, he's done programs for Vice and Channel 10. And right now he's got 2 projects in development. One with Screen Australia and one with SBS. Okay, so I'm just going to throw this question out, and I'm going to start with you, Greg. What drew you to a career in film and media?
Well, I went into a roundabout way because I wanted to be a production designer and was desperate to get into the production design course at NIDA, and I turned up for my interview. Well, I got to the interview stage and they said, "You're 18, you're way too young. Go away and come back in a few years." Thankfully, I finished my HSC and I wanted to do production design. And I noticed there was a new degree in visual and performing arts out at what was Nepean and turned into UWS. I applied to that and got in and ended up getting back into my other love, which was painting and animation and photography. And so I ended up doing animation for my undergraduate visual arts degree. Had a little bit to do with the performing arts people. And in fact, there was some, you may have heard of a guy called David Wenham. He was in my year. Annie Finstra was also in my year, and another guy called John Simpson, who ended up setting up his own independent film production company. And I'm still in contact with those people now. And then I sort of went to art school for my postgrads and kept studying. And I think I've just done 26 years of study. And the great thing about UTS is one of the attributes of UTS is ongoing continuing learning. And I feel like I'm still learning here.
And can I just, sorry, I'm just going to like little plug for Greg, and proof of this is he has a project that will be opening at a major film festival in August. I can't say which one right now because it's a bit of a state secret, but yeah, so Greg is still making work. I'm still making work. So UTS is a really vibrant campus of, the staff are still very actively involved in production. Okay, Dylan, what about you? What drew you to film and the media industry?
That's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
What drew me to it? I really enjoy it. I like everything about it. I like the fact that it's technical. I like the fact that it's creative in a storytelling sense. I like that I can transition from financing and budgeting to writing to actually getting out in the field and shooting stuff. I like getting into sound. I like the balance of. I like that. To me, it's the totality, excuse me, of it. That it engages me mentally and physically in all the ways that I like to be engaged. And I just really enjoy doing it.
What about you, Will? How did you end up with us?
I was actually studying Bachelor at UTS for digital communication, social media before, and I actually was away from Sydney for like 3 months, and back then I was studying Master of Education at Darwin University actually. Well, I would spend 3 months over there, and I feel like, nah, this is not what I actually like it, because I'm more like creative person. I love storytelling actually. I love doing the writings. I love doing the filming, the shooting, and stuff like that. So I did my research about the course that like UTS actually offer, and I found out that they do have media practice in the industry. I read all of the subject details and felt like that's actually the one that I really want to do, because it's not, I can only upgrade my skills in productions, but it's also more knowledge for me that I can significantly like improve myself in the future for the career path. And I feel like UTS has always been my home for like the last 5 years, I think. And why should I not coming back to the place I feel I belong to? And that's what I really love about UTS and about the course as well. Yeah.
That's great. Now, okay, so I'm going to actually, it's kind of interesting because I don't have quite a UTS. This is just down from UTS. That's my little background here. But of course, UTS is a beautiful campus. And
Yes.
we have been back, unusually, we've been back, because this relates to what I'm going to ask Dylan next. We've been back on campus since last July. We came back first. It was a very empty campus, but it was really great for us to be back and to be making things together. And just, I think it really led to drew everyone who was doing the MA together very closely. So Dylan, I've got a question for you. So can you just, in a nutshell, tell me how do you think the film and media industry has changed in COVID, post-COVID world? If, how?
Well, I could read you my 10-page COVID plan that I had to put together for SBS, but I won't do that. Look, I think it's been really interesting actually. After a year that was pretty awful for everybody, we're really lucky here. And actually, I know it's a hoary old cliche, but there's actually a lot of production going on in Australia right now. You've got studios relocating from the US to Queensland because they want to be running productions out of there for the next 5 years. There's a lot of activity happening domestically at the moment, and it's changed. I suppose, how's it changed the industry? Well, it's brought more foreign productions over here. Things stopped for a while, but then at the same time, right now, we're in a position where there's, give or take, for more or less for 12 months, there was no production being made. And so now everybody's trying to fill that void with new productions. And so that's been fantastic. And again, in Australia, we have a really solid film infrastructure here. The light's good, the locations are good. And there's a lot of work happening here at the moment. Yeah. I would say, there's an argument to be made that under, COVID specifically, right now, I won't speak for last year, but I think right now COVID's somewhat beneficial for the Australian industry. I mean, I'm stuck with a project that's supposed to be shooting in India, and that got held up. We got greenlit just before lockdown happened. And so we've been sitting on that. And so that's going to wait for a while longer, but we're still able to sort of carry on business almost as usual right now under COVID.
Yeah. So, you know, and it is really interesting. I mean, really, Australia is booming as the production safe capital in the world. I think there's a lot of, I think we'd all recognize there's a lot of complexity for domestic filmmakers. We're all very much waiting for what the news is about streamers, what they're going to be doing, whether quotas will be imposed or not.
There'll be some interesting news tonight.
Oh, is it tonight?
Mm. Oh, no, is it Thursday? It's Thursday.
No, it's the 26th. Yeah. Oh, no, I thought it was the 26th. Soon. Very soon.
soon.
Hang on, yeah. But it's been quite interesting already. You know, there was talk that I don't want to get too technical, but you know, that the offset that the producers offset the feature films was going to be 30%. It's gone back up to 40%. So there's a lot of movement going on, and every day a state government is they're like all playing one-upmanship right now. They're saying we've got 200 million coming to. And no, we got 500 million in New South Wales. So there's a lot of activity. I think anyone, we're certainly, Greg and I are really interested in the virtual production space. We're exploring a lot of that. That's very new. I think that was really fast tracked by COVID. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on because time is moving and I want plenty of time for questions at the end. Greg, question for you. How do you think that the MPI courses prepare students for working in a post-COVID world? Are we in a post-COVID world? Like, are we still in a
we're in a COVID world. There are some issues in some of the subjects in terms of how do we represent things like immersion in a post-COVID world. So we're coming up with inventive and innovative ideas and techniques to do that. So we are currently sort of researching things like gestural interaction for things like movies, and how does one control stuff in a world when people don't want to touch things. There are other things like putting on glasses in terms of VR. So we're trying to find ways around that. And there are techniques with things like immersion that are coming back. For instance, stereoscopic, like 3D, is having a bit of a resurgence in certain parts of the world, albeit with their own glasses. So it's looking at, not so much looking at a post-COVID world, but looking at a world where the technology that we make movies is rapidly changing, and the way that we experience stories visually and audibly is rapidly changing, and that may include other senses as well. So we're always sort of constantly looking for new ways of telling stories, and we try and fold that into our teaching, I think, and that's why I'm still excited about teaching. I still have a bit of passion about it. I don't know if Will's noticed that I get a bit excited sometimes in class. Maybe not.
Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, one of the things about the MA, all the full-time staff teaching into it, and I think we are very passionate about it because it's so new too, and we are tweaking and changing and listening to students and trying to improve it all the time. Okay, question for you, Will. Okay, so I'm just kind of interested in what sort of skills you've acquired, but I'm also really interested in areas that you may not have thought you were going to go into, that have stretched you a bit
definitely. For sure, it has to be production skills, because during a bachelor, I did some of the Photoshop, I did some of editings, but I was never actually thought about going deep into it until actually study master here, where I did Premiere Pro, when I use After Effects to create a whole lot of projects. And when you actually completing it and you're looking at that, you actually feel like you actually acquired something. Like for me personally, it's very significant, because that's something I never thought about and I have never tried it before. And I spend times working on it, fixing it, have a look at it, and then fixing it again. It's a whole lot of time, but a lot of times and a lot of efforts, but it's something kind of achievement. and you can actually upgrade your skills by keep studying, but keep training your own skills. And aside from that, I think UTS also support the student, especially for this master degree. They do have like a um, video for you to train on skill set of how to portray all those skills to make a video. And they do own, UTS do have a website just for that. And I think it's very helpful for students if they have not getting knowledge about how to editing, and so they can have a look in their own time with all of the UTS material that they have provided, which is, I think it's very excellent for students if they want to upgrade their own skills in the future. And what is he asking? I actually forgot.
The what? Sorry.
Oh, well, what's the other question that you asked me?
Oh, I was just saying, no, you answered it about being stretched in areas that you weren't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Personally, I always put myself in the area that I want to be a content creator, or like a web marketing, where I actually like writing stories and create a bit of content to make engagement. But I feel like by studying this course, it actually helped me to have a bit of view about productions area, for example, video productions, or being a cameraman, a audio recorder, because I actually learned that at UTS, and I feel I'm not bad at it, and maybe I should try it in the future, but still have a lot of time to improve my skills. But certainly it's something that I can think about in the future, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's what's great is, like, I've heard people like just they've enrolled in the subject and think, I don't know anything about this, and they've just, particularly a lot of the Greg stuff Greg does, it's quite new to people and they really enjoy it. Okay, question for you, Dylan. Now I'm going to you've worked quite recently with a great deal of first-time filmmakers who've making their first big production, properly financed and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it would be good to talk to you about kind of the advice that you would give, what sort of qualities you're looking for from recent graduates, just from your experience of take that big step of getting your first big thing financed properly, or what sort of qualities you're looking for, skills and stuff like that.
Yeah, look, sure. And there are, there are a lot of different ways I'd be looking at people in sort of in that bracket. One of them is, as people who have somewhat developed projects and are looking to take them to screen. And then the other one is just people to work in various capacities in production. I think that, first of all, and this may go without saying, but I think it's really helpful to have somebody who can say, well, I did this program I graduated from this program at UTS. That automatically just goes, it gives you so much comfort, and it makes you stand up above the rest of the pack. Because I can tell you, as a producer, I get cold calls and emails from people all the time who are saying, people say, oh, what, if you got any work, can I do stuff? What can I do for you? I'll even work for free. And you just, you don't even reply because it's for all kinds of reasons. But I think, first of all, just knowing that you've put that time in and you've learned this stuff, that puts you well ahead of the pack. The other thing is, even some people who, and the more that I work in the industry, the more I work across various sort of niches of the industry as well. And I get more exposure to sort of how people are functioning in this area over here and over here. But I think, for even people who are very, very talented, making their first film, if they're self-taught, they often have these yawning chasms of a lack of knowledge in certain areas. And so I think that what you really want to know is that on day one, whether you're working with a director or whether you're working as a coordinator, whatever that position is, that the person that you're talking to has a really clear understanding of the basics of production and also what the landscape is in the industry. Because if they don't have a sense of what the actual industrial landscape is out there, who the funders are, what the standards are, what the industrial norms are, it makes it actually really difficult to communicate with people. And that can be just in the sort of basic day-to-day, this is called that on a really simple level. But then on a slightly more advanced level, I find oftentimes that contracting with people who don't have any industry understanding and don't have any industry knowledge about rights and what you have to do in order to contract with Screen Australia, with distributors, with broadcasters, how those rights function. It makes it quite difficult because, as a producer, you're often coming in and saying, I need this, 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 and this in terms of rights, because otherwise I can't take this out and actually get funded. And so, people can get concerned about that because if they don't have that knowledge of the industry going into it to know what standard practices are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a really important point about, like that you want people to have, I think it's two things. I think you want people to kind of be open and curious and have, ideas, but you also want people to understand something of the landscape, of the professional landscape and how it works, because I think it can be quite confronting. One of the things, is so lovely about having the advanced creative entrepreneurship subject with a creative leadership skill, because I think leadership skills are really critical in understanding that you're going to be working part of the team. You're going to be, knowing what you don't know, knowing what you need to learn, being nimble, being able to kind of sort of like pick up skills, but having a really good grounding from a postgraduate degree is great.
Yeah, and also, I think it's really helpful for, you're coming out of a master's program of the quality of UTS. Not only do you have a knowledge about how to make a film, how to tell a story, what that sort of professional practice is across the media landscape, but also, you've got some life experience. You've actually invested in doing a postgraduate program, and that says to me that you have something to say. And that's not the case for all people who want to get into the industry, but it's absolutely crucial.
Okay, we should probably now, we've got about 15 minutes to go, open it up to questions.
I'll just, so anonymous attendee had his question, has his or her or their question. Does UTS have any industry partnerships?
Yes, so we have, obviously, I just mentioned Compton. We have lots of industry partnerships. So, right now, so Will know, he went through this. So one of the things in my subject, we create campaigns for real life clients. And if you do design thinking, they work each year with different clients like the Federal Police, making campaigns for them. We have loads and loads of internship opportunities that we post, some paid, some not paid. We put graduates up for those things. We're very closely connected to Create New South Wales and Screen Australia. We've got, I think, when we launched this, we approached, some, like a lot of leading graduates. Graham Mason, who runs Screen Australia, is one of the UTS graduates. But we approached pretty much everyone at the top of their field in the industry, from Chris Stenders to Veronica Genet, who's a Academy Award-winning editor, to do promos and to do films for us that are embedded in the EMA about core skills, and everyone has been incredibly supportive in that. So yeah, we have loads of, and they're constantly evolving and constantly ongoing. It's been a bit tricky during COVID, but they're picking up again. So yeah, we want to stay as connected to the industry as possible. Okay.
And anonymous attendee also asks, are there any tips for building a portfolio and or establishing yourself for freelance work in the industry? And will it be touched upon in these courses?
Do you want to answer that, Craig?
Yes. A portfolio is good, but just getting as much work and making your own work and making it with people that you like will help with that. My son, for instance, has just recently graduated, and a lot of the work that he's getting now has come from word of mouth from when he was studying, and he's gone out and he is getting more and more work just based on the experience that he's had when he was studying, and now that he's working in the industry. So it's just, he's just working a lot with sound people, and it's just networking and showing that you are good at your job.
Yeah, and you can make as much as you like at UTS. Like I said, I mean, we Media Lab, we've got like, I mean, there are all the productions relating to your subject, but there's like just, I mean, how many productions do we have a year? I mean,
Hundreds and hundreds.
I mean, hundreds and hundreds.
Too many, Rachel.
Yes,
too many.
Too many. But one of the things we encourage our students is to build up that portfolio and to get onto productions, to do things that maybe they're not. It's new to them. Work in the camera department. Work in the art department.
I should say that we have lots. We have a lot of productions, but we also have a lot of gear. So gear's never an issue, and whether that be my favorite camera to shoot with at the moment, up to the new Sony FX6, which I'm currently using as the world's most expensive webcam.
Yes, they're beautiful. We've just got those in and we're getting a whole load more, but they're really good. Are there any more questions? You want any student point of view questions that you've got?
We do have another anonymous attendee.
Yes.
He, she, or they have lots of questions.
Okay.
I am a career changer, currently in marketing, but want to go into film production. Do you have any advice for me? I am nervous, but excited to change.
Okay, I've had quite a few nervous Nellies start off. So this is my advice. My advice is to hop on the website, have a poke around, read all the subject descriptions that we offer. Feel confident, and I think, Will, you can probably talk about this too. I mean, this is not dissimilar to your experience, that certainly doing StoryCorps, and we will assume, so you will be introduced to the camera, we'll do some lighting safety stuff, you'll do the audio recording, we'll learn how to cut, like now we have lots of people who are really good at all those things, right? But we also accept that some people are quite new to that, and you can back off. I mean, so for example, with me, you'd have to say, yeah, I'm going to shoot this campaign right now. You can say, no, I'll cut that, or I'll write the story, or I'll do the titles. You can work around, and then as you get more confident, start taking bigger risks in your media production. I also think if you can get, if you've got the time to start volunteering on many productions that are going on, you can build up your experience fairly quickly. I mean, I always say, and I'm going to get Will to talk about this, it's not rocket science. It really is not. It is really like learning a skill. The more you practice, the better you get. It's like riding a bike. Cameras are not frightening. They seem frightening when you're not used to them, but they come with instruction kits, and you can learn to use them pretty effectively. And the great thing now, there's lots of online support, and there's lots of people to show you what to do. And we have a whole media lab full of people to help you out. So to feel, make the change. Hey, life is short. Who knows when the next pandemic's coming? Just take the leap. That's what I say. But Will, do you agree with that point?
Oh yes, definitely. I would say I was just nervous at the beginning of the course, because when I read the subject outline, I was like, oh, you have to do a lot of production skills, where my skill at that time was pretty limited, and I think soon I would just start to feel a bit confident about editing. But it takes time. Everything takes time. I believe you take time to learn. You take time to do your own research. You're curious about creating something. But like, trust yourself, because you need to make the change to know where's your limit at, or how you benefit from the goal that you want to change to, and it will pay it off one day, I believe, because I feel like right now I'm on my right path. I learned the right things. I feel confident about my stuff that I have done. I feel confident about the studying I'm doing right now. And I think it will be important for you, if you want to make a change and you really love to do it, then you just need to be patient with that, and be able to have that on top of your ability and be the master of it. So it just takes a little bit of time to train yourself in that area.
There's a question for Will, actually. I'm just
Yeah.
looking. So,
Question.
wondering what's your favorite subject in your course so far and why?
Oh, okay. So I have two teachers here.
Yeah, right. So you know the correct answer to that.
Producing. It's producing.
Yes, I think it's productions. One of the reasons that I love doing productions right now because I got more practical skills. That I think that is the most important, but also the most interesting thing about doing Master of Media Practice at UTS. You got to do a lot of productions. You need to adapt to all of devices that UTS can provide you, from camera, from lighting setup, to even of the green screen. For example, if you've seen Avengers and you've seen the behind the scenes, you see a lot of characters they playing behind the green skins, and you can imagine you do one of that while you're studying at UTS. How cool is that? But in terms of the name of the subject, I would recommend you study StoryCorps, which is Rachel's teaching, and also
You have no choice, though, because it's compulsory. But that's
and
nice,
also
Will.
advanced post productions, where you edit your video after you shooting, you create new things, you create new post productions, and you will see your product after that, and I'm sure you're going to be proud of that. Definitely.
I've got that $5 for you, Will.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just $5. Yeah, we're just drowning in money here. Dylan, why don't you get you to answer this question? What's the biggest challenge when you face starting out in the industry?
What's the biggest challenge when I don't know. I could speak from personal experience, but I think it would take too long. I think it's important to define what it is that you want to do. And I think that in order to define what it is that you want to do, what you're trying to accomplish, what role you want to occupy, what it is that you want to say, you can't actually start to push yourself in that direction until you actually understand what options there are for you. And I think that, doing something like this and with the intensity that UTS has, I think you'd be able to do that. And you actually, as Will was saying, inhabiting all of those roles and then figuring out, what really works for you. And that's not to say that you've got to commit to something and that's what you got to do for the rest of your life. But I think it really is important to know what it is that you want to do. And unless you have that, you don't know what to say when you meet somebody who could give you an opportunity. You don't know where to look. You don't know whether you want to get funding for a short film, whether you want to go off and make something on your own and put it up on YouTube, or whether you want to go work in a production company, or what that thing is, until you can define it for yourself. And I think you'll have a really clear idea a much better idea about yourself and about the industry and what options are available to you at the end of this process.
Yeah, and I'm just going to reiterate that that's very true, and it's something. Look, we had this wonderful graduate Sunday. Sunday Emerson, is that her name? Yeah. She talked the last time we had a showcase, which was actually 2019, because we didn't have one last year because of COVID. But Sunday is probably if you look at her CV, she's very much a rising star. She got one of these Lexus grants. She's got development money for a feature, all kinds of things. But she's really interesting. She said, you come out, you graduate, and I think I recognize my experience in what she was saying, and it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough for a couple of years, not to do what you want because you can pursue your passion, but actually to make a living income to survive on that. That doesn't happen straight away, because one of the tricky things is it's easy to get a job, but that doesn't really give you the time to maybe pursue your passion project. So that balance between the passion project and paying the rent and the income is tricky for the first few years. And that's where you use the experiences at a university to build those networks. And there's that wonderful, I always, encourage this in our students so strongly, that the Blue Tongue model, which is the what are they called, the brothers, Blue Tongue, anyone can throw in David, come on.
The stunt guy and He went to, he did Nepean and
No, it's
Edgerton.
David Michaud and
And the Edgertons. Yeah.
the Edgertons. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things, and they were just graduates, and one of the things they decided is that when they got a job, they would offer their friends a job on the production, and not quite badly paid, and they just built up that network over years, and now they're doing, and that was cinematographers and sound record, all this kind of thing. So I think that is a model I encourage very much. Stay tight with your crew. Stay in touch with us. We've constantly got graduates working on productions at uni. And some of them are just, I mean, Meg White is just an extraordinary cinematographer, Diamond, what's done soon? I can't remember her name, but I met another amazing female cinematographer. We're just getting really interesting people coming up through the ranks. But you know, it's, if you want to really pursue your passion, it's going to be a couple of years where you just you've got your friends, you've got your network, you've got your alumni, you've got your university to support you, and we stay very connected to that. And the other thing is we have a lot, you know, more and more jobs for people who've graduated that we're constantly putting up and circulating. Any more questions we've got? Do we have any more questions? We've answered them all.
Nope, I think we've answered all the questions.
Okay, well, so maybe we'll just start to wrap up. Just please feel free to throw in another question if you've got anything. You know our names, Greg and I. You can always contact us. So I guess, oh, I could ask you, Greg. So what was the most challenging thing for you? Or is it still, and then that's the other thing I've got to say. One thing I know about the industry, it's always challenging. Right.
In terms of the industry, or I don't know if it's challenging, but it's sort of like I love keeping new tech. I don't know if you've noticed, Rachel, but I like new technology, and I love keeping up to date. And I love, there's the expression about teaching old dogs new tricks, and I love new tricks, and I'm an old dog, so
Yeah, there you go.
you have it. And if you guys are mature age students, and you're probably old dogs like me, and you love learning new tricks, and the MPI is where you can learn some tricks.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I guess we'll wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us. If you've got any questions that pop up in the middle of the night and you want to ask any of us, I want to thank Will so much for coming. That's terrific. Thank you, Dylan, and best of luck with all your projects, you know, once COVID evolves. Thank you, Greg, and your new tricks. And we'll say good night. Okay.